My biggest sticking point in game is that I have too much game. And what I mean by that is there's too much game in my game. There's not enough just normal conversation in my game. And that evolved over time. I came to that sticking point, through a long progression. And to kind of start with that, I'll get into what is conversation and what is game. But the difference between just conversing with someone and actually running game or having game or having an interaction that can lead to sex, it comes down to a few basic things, but the biggest one is escalation. It comes down to moving things forward as you go, right? I teach immersion in Las Vegas, which means that I break down a lot of student footage. We take our students out, we film them, and then I break down their footage on a regular basis. And over and over and over again, I see the same shit from student after student after student, which is I see them having these conversations that are just destined to go nowhere, right? Not that the girl's even rejecting them, not that the girl's not enjoying the conversation. The girl usually loves it, but it's destined to go nowhere because the guy is not taking it anywhere, right? And if the guy's not taking it anywhere, it's not going to go there. It's like I call it the half-hour conversation to nowhere, right? And I see that over and over and over again. And what you need to do to avoid that, and what I teach guys to do over and over again, is just show some intent, just move it forward, just escalate, right? You need to be taking it somewhere or it's going to go nowhere. And I've kind of broken it down. And there are 4 different ways that you can escalate in a situation or escalate with a girl. And you don't have to do like all of them at once, and you don't have to be like constantly pushing anyone. And that's the other mistake guys make, right? That's the other one I see all the time. Is like you'll take a guy and he'll start trying to get physical with a girl. There's some resistance. He'll be like just trying to jam physicality down her throat. Or he'll be trying to like talk about some intimate shit like we're going to be like together and this and that. And the girl will resist it and he'll keep like jamming that idea down her throat. And you don't have to do that. You need to be escalating, but not in the same way over and over again. So I've come up with a model because that's what I do. I come up with models. That's my like forte. I'm the technical guy. But basically there are 4 ways you can escalate. And you can escalate logistics, i.e. moving them closer to a bedroom or a place where sex can happen. You can escalate physicality, meaning you're getting more physical with them. You can escalate emotionally, meaning that you're making it more emotionally charged for them or more about you and her. Or you can escalate conversation topic, meaning you're talking about something that's more sexual. That last one's a little unclear, so I'll go more in depth on it so you understand. If you're having a conversation about sandwiches, that's less sexual than having a conversation about tattoos. Does that make sense? And that's less sexual than having a conversation about how she lost her virginity. Right? So there's sort of a range of topics that are more and more intimate and more geared towards sex, and that's an escalation as well. But within the conversation, if you're not escalating on one of those 4 levels, there's no game going on. Okay? There is no possibility that you are going to sleep with a girl. There's a possibility you'll have a nice, pleasant chat, and at the end it should be, well, thank you for the conversation. It's really fun. Take care. Have a nice day. Right? But it's not going to go anywhere. And I learned that because I was very shy growing up. Up until the age of 18, I was a super introvert. I would never start conversation with strangers. And then when I started conversation with strangers, it was within the context of they were hot girls, I wanted to meet them, and I was trying to get them on a date or get them into bed. So that's kind of how I learned social interaction. And for that reason, I don't have the 30-minute conversation to nowhere. And for that reason, I happen to get laid a lot, and I happen to sort of get laid by accident. I took a break for 4 years at one point from being an RSD coach, and I went and played poker. And I was specifically told by my poker coaches, you are not allowed to date or have sex with anyone that works at the casino or that plays at the casino. Because they were backing me with their money, and they didn't want me distracted, right? They were putting their money behind me playing. And I tried really, really hard not to, and I ended up sleeping with like 6 different people at the casino. So like by pure accident. And the reason is that just became the nature of my communication. So I want to actually teach you guys sort of how to have that in your communication so that you do sleep with people by accident. But then I also want to sort of encourage you and tell you that it's also not something you want to go too far with. All right? And I was trying to think of a metaphor for this outside. I think it's a little bit like addiction to pornography, if that makes sense. Because when you learn to escalate, you're going to get in these conversations and in these interactions that get very sexual very quickly. And that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to start talking to a girl and like 5 minutes in, you're like, like up in her face and like pulling her hair and she's trying to kiss you and you're telling her she can't and there's all this tension. It's so much fun. It's so good. But the problem is because it's so good and because it's so much fun and because it's so effective, you get addicted to it. And then what happens is when you're having a normal conversation, when it's going totally fine, like you're with like a totally sweet girl, she's really hot, it's going great, but it's just like not escalating, you're like, fuck this, I'm bored. Like, why are you not making out with me yet? What is this bullshit? You want to be careful about that too. That's like taking it full circle, and that's like where you've like watched so much porn that you look at a normal girl and you're not aroused anymore, all right? You don't want to take it to that level. But, so that's the caution with the stuff I'm about to teach you. You still need to do all the things Jeff's talking about, which is like be a normal guy, don't be like weird, creepy pickup guy, and ideally you should be the guy who's like a good storyteller and cool and charismatic the way Jeff is, because he's a great example of that. So I want you to, that's my caution to all this, is make sure you keep that and make sure you cultivate that at the same time. However, the biggest sticking point I see from guys is not escalating, so I'm going to teach you how to escalate. Is that fair? Yes. Cool. All right, so the 4 different ways that you can escalate. First is, well, logistics are obvious. Logistics is taking it closer to a sexual location or taking the situation to a more intimate degree. So, for example, if you're talking to 3 girls and you want to talk to one of them, you need to make a decision. You're talking to all 3 of them. Just make a decision to go for it and talk to just one. So say I'm talking to these 3 here, talking, and then all of a sudden I just go, hey, you know what's interesting about you? Boom, on one, right? Or, you know, the funniest thing happened to me the other day. Just zone in, talk to the one girl instead of the 3. That's the simplest form. Next step would be take her like 5 feet away from the group. You know, my feet are really sore right now. Can we just go sit down? Right? Next would be, you know, are your friends really protective, or would they let you come like 20 feet over and just have a quick drink with me? Would they like flip out and call the cops? Right? And you just take it a little further and a little further and a little further. That needs to happen throughout the course of the interaction. You do not, however, want to be escalating logistics without other things going on in the conversation. You don't want to be just like the guy you're having a normal platonic conversation, and you're just like, come home with me. It's not like that, okay? All these factors need to kind of come together at once, all right? But that's one. Factor number 1, logistics. Factor number 2, physicality. Pretty obvious. In order to have sex with a girl, it helps to touch her, right? I have yet to meet the guy who can have sex with a girl without touching her. If you can, well, congratulations. But you're going to need to do that. And for a lot of guys, for me at first, it was very nerve-wracking. When I would go on dates, my first year in the game, I would be so scared to touch a girl that my level of physicality was like, isn't that interesting? I think that's so cool. And I'd like just like touch her arm just to like prove to myself that like she wouldn't punch me in the face because I touched her arm. Right? I was that nervous, and I had to get through that. And that was a step I had to go with. And then I gradually got more and more intimate. The caution I'll give a lot of guys that learn pickup is you learn that physicality and get to see that it's okay, and you become very daring with it, but you become daring with it in this like very sort of like clownish, playful way. So you can always tell like a pickup artist in like they're like spinning the girls around and lifting them up all over their shoulder and like doing like crazy dances with them, or like covering their eyes and turning them backwards and just like weird shit like that. And all that's great. All of that is great because you're breaking that physical barrier, and because you're pushing the comfort zone, you're allowing yourself to be okay with things, and because it's fun for the girl. That's all really great. But that's not the stuff that's going to lead to sex. Okay? There's a big difference between what I call physical escalation and physical like intimacy. Okay? Physical intimacy is when your physicality is not that crazy playful stuff. It's the calm, cool, relaxed stuff, like gradually just stroking her arms while you're talking, or like talking while you're holding her and she's like hugging you back, and just having that intimate eye-to-eye contact. Okay? That's the kind of stuff that's going to get you towards sex. Right? And obviously things like kissing, biting the neck, all those are good for arousal, and that's great for later on, but it's not something that you need early on in the set, okay? But do make that distinction between physicality just for like fun, playful physicality and intimate physicality, because a lot of guys never make that bridge. They get so comfortable with the fun, crazy stuff, and they think they're just gonna fun, crazy, and then like suddenly like fun, crazy their way to sex. It doesn't work like that. Sex is usually slower, more intimate. We call it a phase shift, right? Here's an example. Say you're talking to a girl, it's very like going very, very fast, and you want to kiss the girl. Here's what I would do. Shh. We talked a lot. We talked too much. Come here, right? That's a phase shift. There's a marked change in energy towards something that's more relaxed and sensual, and something that could actually lead to a sex. Okay, so that's what you want to eventually be having there. Okay, so that's pretty simple. Those are the first 2. Now the next 2 are ones that are a little more in-depth and ones that people don't really discuss. Okay, The next is making things sort of emotionally relevant to the girl, okay? And this is a concept I got from Ryan. Brilliant, brilliant guy, former instructor, so I have to give him credit. But he made this model. He called it I, you, and we, okay? And he said, basically, there are 4 ways you can talk to the girl. First is I, meaning talking about yourself. Next is you, question mark, meaning asking her about herself. Next is you, statement, telling her about herself. And the last is we, talking about the two of you together. And if you look at it, each one of those is more intimate than the last. Talking about yourself is very safe. You can say anything about yourself, and she's not going to object to it. So you can just blabber on about yourself. You're not taking any risk there. But you're also not developing a lot of connection, right? If you start asking a girl about herself, now you're indicating that you like the two of you together, right? The problem with asking, by the way, is it tends to be value-taking. I call this like the chode way of showing interest, and I tend to discourage it. But it does work. If a girl already likes you, you can definitely do that. So talking about just asking her questions is actually more intimate than talking about yourself. The next one, however, is the one I really want you guys to do, which is telling her about herself. This is something that nobody actually teaches and one of the best ways to hook a girl's interest. Because if somebody tells you something about yourself, are you interested in it? Yes, it's relevant to you. It's relevant to your future. It's relevant to how life is going to be for you forever, right? It's also potentially dangerous and or threatening for you. If somebody insults you, whether you believe the insult or not, you might be concerned that someone said that thing about you, and that could affect you on an emotional level. That can get you invested in the conversation, okay? So by telling someone about themselves, you are allowing them to get that emotional investment, and that's key to hooking the set. That's key to moving things forward. All right, so really encourage you to try that. There's an old school sort of thing that we used to use called the mini cold read, which is like, you're so X, it's just like Y. Like, you're so cute, you're like my little sister. Or you're so devious, you're like, I don't know, like Putin from Russia, whatever. I don't even know who's devious, but whatever. But you make this up, whatever the format is. But the key thing isn't the format, it's that you're making it relevant to her and you're telling her about herself, okay? And again, if someone were to tell you about yourself, you'd be interested in that, even if you're not interested in the person. So it's a great little way to sort of get in the door and get some sort of relevance there, okay? And then the last one is the one that nobody ever does, which is we. You talk about you and the girl together, you take that risk. We're not going to get along. We are going to get along. We're going to go on this adventure. We're going to go over here now. Once you're at that level of we, now you're pretty close to a situation where you can pull, a situation where you can get permission for her to leave the friends, a situation where sex might happen. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's the sort of contextual between you and her thing. And then the last one is emotional arousal. What sorts of topics of conversation are you bringing up? Are you bringing up, first of all, are you bringing up things that are extreme enough to spike her emotions? Right, if you're just having a bland conversation, did you see that sports game the other day? And traffic was really bad today. There is no emotional context there. There's nothing going on emotionally. If you have that conversation with a girl for 10 hours, you are no closer to sleeping with her than you, well, a little bit. There's a little bit of comfort. You're almost no closer to sleeping with her than you were in like the first minute of the conversation, right? But if you start talking to her about like how and why she got her first tattoo, or like where she lost her virginity, or what the craziest place she traveled, or like weirdest thing she ever did was, now you're escalating towards something that could go somewhere, right? And then if you bring up topics of like personal nature of yourself and topics that are more sexual in nature, etc., that's getting closer and closer and closer, okay? So now you have these 4 different ways to escalate. Now here's the secret. Here's like the secret sauce. You want to be doing all 4 of them kind of together, okay? You don't get so physical with a girl that you're trying to like rape her before you've like had any sort of intimate conversation and while you're still just talking about yourself and have never talked about her, right? You don't get to the point where you're talking about like your future together with her before you've ever like made any physical contact, right? You don't do that. You don't get super physical with her when she's in front of all her friends and you have yet to get her isolated or anywhere near your bedroom, because now it's so predictable you're going to get tons of resistance from her and from her friends. Does that make sense? So all of these need to be kind of escalating on the same level. And this is what guys miss over and over again. Number one mistake, failure to escalate. All 4 levels, no escalation happening, bland, boring conversation. But then the next big mistake I see over and over and over again so often is some guys like trying to escalate one particular channel, one of the 4, and they're just hammering on that one channel. And number 1, they're getting a lot of resistance because the girl's not ready for it. The girl's not ready for that escalation. But even if they did get that escalation, they're not helping themselves. they're working against themselves because the very fact of that escalation happening without the others, it just makes the girl less and less comfortable and makes her less and less receptive to everything else that's going on. Okay? So those are sort of the biggest things that I see over and over and over again. Now to kind of get back to like why that's my particular sticking point, because I've been doing this for 14 years, because I'm very calibrated on all that, and because basically that's because I created that model, I basically get that model right in every set. What that means is that I get a lot of sets that go really well really quickly, and that's good. And that's actually highly efficient. But it also means that I've become kind of addicted to that, right? I've gotten a little addicted to like the set going well in 5 minutes. I've gotten addicted to like the girl who's like begging her friend to come home with me, and it makes the normal interaction harder. And so I made a commitment to myself. Like I told you guys, I just finished the hot seat. So I made a commitment. I wasn't going to do this during hot seat, because during hot seat I'm just trying to game my best, put as much footage together as possible. But I told myself, as soon as hot seat's over, I'm going to take a period of time and I'm going to not escalate properly. I'm going to actually do that wrong, right? I'm going to fuck that up. I'm going to try and like make it so that I'm not forcing the escalation, I'm not pushing it forward, and I'm going to try and game by doing more like what you saw Jeff do up here, which is being just a crazy good conversationalist, being interesting, and trying to enjoy the conversation for its own sake. And the other commitment I made along with that is I'm going to try very, very hard to make girls like me for non-sexual reasons. Right? I'm gonna have girls like chase me and like try and go out on date after date after date with me while I deny them sex and even deny them the opportunity for sex. That's the new thing. Now, why do I do that? One, because it's a sticking point. Yes, it's very validating for me. That's why. It's just because I like to like own their soul. No, but this is important too, because this goes to learning game and what you want to do in learning game. Okay? One of the biggest reasons I came up through a very structured style of game where it was very like, say exactly this, do this routine. Most guys that got good during that period stagnated. They stayed with that style of game. They're still doing the same thing 10 years later, and they haven't really gotten any better. Why is it that I've gotten significantly better? It's because at certain points in learning game and learning about myself, even as I was doing well, I was willing to put aside everything that was working well for me and say, here's a new concept. Here's a new thing here's a new thing I want to try. Here's something that should work. So I'm going to fail for a while in order to figure it out. I'm going to fail for a while to be experimental and make it work. I'm going to accept that failure. All right? And that's important too. That's another key component. In fact, maybe even the biggest component of all the things I'm going to teach you. Because all these other things, if you have the right mentality, if you have the right way of going out and learning, you will discover all the techniques over time. But if you don't have the right learning process, you'll never get there. All right? And so the reason I tell you that, I want to share with you guys kind of like, I mean, I guess you guys don't have a whole lot of sympathy for my sticking point of like, the sets are on too fast, so I want to slow it down and get the others, whatever. But the point is, I see a flaw, right? I see a flaw in what I'm doing, and because I see that, I want to work on it. I want you guys to be the same way, even if it makes you worse in the short run, okay? Come from a level of abundance, not just for right now, but abundance for your life. Come from a level of, not only there are a lot of girls available to me now and I could date lots of girls, but even more than that, however many I could date now, think how many I could date in a year or 2 years or 5 years if I actually do this properly, okay? Another good example of this, I had a student in immersion who he'd taken a boot camp with Julian, and Julian gave him a very weird assignment. He said, you're going to do a 30-day challenge. You're going to go out every single night for 30 days straight. And for those 30 days, you're going to push it to the absolute extreme. You're going to push and push and push. You're not going to take no for an answer. You're going to push it to you're going to play to win. You're going to burn it to the ground, go to the bitter end. But one other thing, you're not allowed to have sex. Fucked up mission, right? So you're going to play, but you're going to play the game absolutely right. You're going to play it absolutely right, but you're going to play it not to get sex. You're going to play it right because it's important to play it right for its own sake. Right? And it's important to play it right without outcome. The reason he gave him this assignment, by the way, was he was having a really hard time stepping up to hotter girls. He already had really good game with like sort of average or cute girls, but he's having a really hard time stepping up to hotter girls because every time it would start to go well with them, he'd start getting in his head. He'd be like, oh shit, this girl's really hot. Now what am I doing? And he'd start thinking about it differently. But when Julian took away that idea of like sex is not possible anymore, now he's no longer able to get in his head because it was going well. He's able to be completely outcome free and really play to just learn, right? And in that month, his game got massively, massively better, and he failed at the mission about 6 times. Okay? So I want to encourage you guys to do that, okay? So I guess the main upshot, I'm not going to take too long because we have a lot of other speakers here, but the main upshot of what I want to give you guys is I want you to structure your game in a way that it can work, and that means you have to escalate. You have to know the path forward, you have to know what the end you're going for is, and you have to move in that direction, right? And then the other thing is take the perspective of being a student of what you do, whether it be game or anything else in life. Take the perspective of being a long-term student. Don't worry so much about your success now, because if you take the right steps, the success will come in the long run, and it will come orders of magnitude greater than what you'd expect. It will come 10 times stronger in a few years than you could ever have anticipated today, but only if you do it the right way, okay? So it's a pretty short speech by me, but I hit the points I wanted to hit, and I will bring up the next speaker for you guys. Hope you enjoyed it.